Welcome to the Hot Bizfluent podcast, where we get all up in your business. So let's talk. Today's guests are brought to you today by Crush City Realty Group, your premier Houston real estate experts, and luxury real estate agent Alyssa Emmons, where everything she touches turns to sold. And finally, Kovo Capital, fast, flexible financing for all your commercial lending needs. This podcast is for information purposes only. The views expressed in this podcast may not be those of the host or management. Don't forget to stay to the very end to find out how to get some of our amazing merch. Let's get down to business. And now please welcome your host with the most, JP Byers.
Hey, everybody. How are y'all doing today? So it's our very first podcast that we're doing together. In the past, I've done a couple podcasts myself, and we've been talking about this for far too long. And Alyssa and Josh and I decided it was time to get it done. So here we are. Let's bring everybody on stage. It's Alyssa and Josh. Hey, guys. How are y'all today?
Hello. Fantastic. How are you?
I'm great. So you just got back from vacation?
I did. I got it. Ago? Yep. I walked in the door about 40 minutes ago.
So where would you go?
Everybody was on time today. We were in Clearwater Beach, Florida, soaking up some sun. I am very
Tampa.
Burned under just burned.
My
head is burned. Everything is burned. It's fine.
Speaking of burned, I got recruited this coming Sunday to take over somebody's garage that got burned.
Oh,
Josh, no. Josh had a structure fire.
Best worst case scenario I could have had. So
absolutely.
Josh, I got a lot of great friends, so I'm fortunate to have that.
Amen. So it's our first podcast, guys, and every 6 months, and Crush City Realty Group is honestly working on trying to get into it every quarter with Bill Napick, who is also known as Radio Bill, who is the host for Real Estate Matters on AM 950. That's 5 p.m. every Sunday, and he's had Crush City Realty Group a couple times on the podcast and the radio show. And every time I've been, I've got to meet this guy that does insurance, and he's always phenomenal, always comes with information that actually matters to people. It's not, hey, hop online and try to find insurance that you think fits. It's, hey, this is the kind of guy that can actually walk you through what you need, why you need it, and why you're spending this money. So Josh and I were actually lucky enough to get a chance to see him again this 2 Mondays ago. And so I'd like to introduce everybody to John Bramblett from Stewart Insurance. John, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Alyssa, for having me.
Heck yeah, no, we're here. So, John, you've got some stuff like we are not worried about residential stuff here. We specifically worry about businesses, commercial real estate, investors, people that are out to make money. And we need you to tell us how it is they're supposed to protect themselves.
Well, absolutely. I'm glad that we're here and we have a chance to visit about that. I think the first thing to keep in mind is just an understanding of what risk is and what exposure is. So risk is simply the probability of something bad happening, and exposure is what that financial outcome would be if the risk were to occur. So what insurance does and what we do with our clients is first and foremost, or what are some things that we can do to help our clients minimize that risk or minimize the chance of something bad happening? And then from an exposure perspective, how can we offset that exposure or move that exposure onto another entity? And in this case would be an insurance company. So what we work with our clients with and try to make sure that they're comfortable with is, in the very simplest terms, all insurance is how much risk do I want to take on as an individual or as an organization, and how much risk do I want to offset to an insurance company. And as long as our clients, or whether they be our personal lines clients or our business clients, as long as they're comfortable with knowing what risk they're taking on themselves versus the risk they're offsetting or placing onto the insurance companies, and they are aware of that and they're comfortable with it, then in our eyes they are properly insured.
So I got a question for you. So you saying your risk and offsetting, as much as I'd like to believe that everybody that watches this podcast is a very fluent business owner that is very well versed in understanding what you're talking about when you're saying offset, I have a strong feeling and a hope that people come to our podcast with the want to learn something new. So with that being the case, when you're talking about an offset, do you think you can be a little bit more specific? Are you saying like, I've got to spend X number of dollars per month and it's going to save me X number of dollars in the event of an emergency?
I'm sorry, that's a great question. When I say offset, it simply means purchasing some insurance that will offset that particular issue. So, for example, almost everybody has auto insurance, and all that does is, there are some things that you can do to minimize the risk. So, how you drive, when you drive, the maintenance of your car, those things can minimize the risk. But also, you can buy auto insurance so that if there was a wreck or you did damage somebody or you did hurt somebody, you could offset or move that cost onto the insurance company because you had an insurance policy or an insurance plan. And that's really what we're talking about from a business perspective as well, that you can offset or move that risk onto the insurance company by having specific business insurance plans for potential business issues. Is that a better understanding?
I think so. I think that's pretty clear. So the thing is you guys offer a whole list of things that businesses may or may not need.
Yes.
One of the ones that really is becoming a bigger deal, because let's face it, the U.S. government just doesn't care about cyber crimes. So do you mind talking about your cyber liability? What does it look like? What's the kind of cost that you're looking at? What does it actually really protect you from? And do you have any success stories of people that have actually had to use it, even as unfortunate as it is?
Well, we had a big incident a couple of weeks ago, right? Or 10 days ago?
As
yep.
Yeah, I mean, there have been a lot of large companies that get hit. I think there's a couple of things. One, I'm not so sure I would agree with you, JP, on that the government doesn't care. I just think that they're behind, and it's hard to keep up with what the cyber criminals are doing. We've been fortunate enough on Real Estate Matters to have a couple of FBI agents on to talk about what they're doing. But you're right. The challenge is that these fraudsters, or the FBI calls them bad actors, are becoming more and more sophisticated. And it's especially in the real estate world, but any business that either handles personal private information or handles funds in a transaction is viable or potentially liable to be infiltrated. And there are some very sophisticated ways they do it, and there's some very simplistic ways that they do it. So I think that's the first thing to keep in mind, that we are all open to that. But businesses that handle funds, or that transfer funds, or that deal with a lot of public, private, or personal private information are really businesses that the cyber criminals focus on. And that's why you see a lot of instances in the real estate world. So we have clients that are real estate brokers, property management firms, independent title and attorney agents that have cyber coverage. So it does a couple of things. So if you have a breach, can help with the cost to any costs that are associated with that breach, whether it be potential repairs, if it's notifications to your clients that there has been a breach. It helps with defense costs, which could potentially be one of the larger aspects of it. So it helps with the defense cost. In some cases, the insurance companies will have relationships with law firms that have specific experience with that type of coverage. So that's a critical aspect to it. If you're handling funds, then it can have some first person and third person wire fraud potential coverage. So where did the incident occur? What was the issue? Where did the issue originate from? So were the funds taken from because of an issue with your firm, or were the funds taken because there was an issue with somebody that you were dealing with, a third party? So it would help with that. It can help with the let's say if you were to be infiltrated, or a company was infiltrated, and you had to provide some sort of protection for your clients using a Bitdefender or Norton antivirus, it would help with the cost of that if there is a ransom. So one of the fastest growing areas that we're seeing is the area of ransomware. So these bad actors will grab a hold of your data and they will basically ransom it, saying, if your firm doesn't pay us X, we're going to do a couple of things. Either we'll sell it on the black web, or we'll just release it online. So the insured, the company has to make the decision about, are they going to pay the ransom, or if they file a claim with their insurance company and they have cyber liability coverage, do they decide together to pay the ransom? What we don't know is paying the ransom, that doesn't, since we're dealing with criminals, paying the ransom doesn't automatically mean that you're going to get that data back. The other thing that these criminals are doing when it pertains to ransomware is, since now they have access to your customer information, your client information, they're reaching out to your clients and saying, hey, JP, we just infiltrated John's system, and we now have control of all of John's data. And we've told John that we'll give it back to him, but he's got to pay us X amount of dollars by the state. So JP, part of what we have is your information. So you better make sure that John pays that money, or we're going to sell all your information out on the dark web. And if you start thinking about the types of information that we have on our clients and how valuable it could be to nefarious groups, I think that's where this idea of cyber coverage can come into play.
I can tell you what, though, John, I can tell you right now, I am the wrong guy. That is not the phone call that they want to have with me. Anytime I get into those people from all over the place, they call me trying to scam me. I keep them on the phone as long as I possibly can. I actually had a guy talk to me for an hour and a half before he finally caught on that I was not giving in.
Well, a lot of this, there are scenarios where, and the phone calls are usually those to individuals, or you'll get the email that your Norton antivirus is due, and to update it, you need to make the payment of $570.
Oh yeah. And
that if people don't remember which antivirus software they have, sometimes they just pay it. We ran across a situation where the company was pretending to be one of these antivirus companies, and they took a different tact. They told the friend of the firm that we made a mistake and we were making a refund on your the cost of your coverage. Yep. But instead of making the $500 refund, we made a $50,000 refund.
Yep.
So we need to get into your account with you so we can get that money back. So basically what they do is they get in and start to work it together. But instead of having access to the computer so that you can help navigate, they now get in and have access to the account. So that's the case. And you see that on the business side as well. That generally takes place through a link. So somebody sends you an email that appears to be from an organization that you do business with. And you click on that link, and then suddenly they now have access to your account. We offer a continuing education class called Real Estate Liability, Protect Your Licenses and Reduce Your Risk. And there's a case study in there where a realtor just finished a transaction with a client. They receive a email that looks like it's from the title company where they closed. So it's just right post-closing. So an expected email, the realtor, and this was based on a real life happening. The realtor clicks on it. Now the bad actor has access to all of their files. So now the fraudster, the bad actor, begins to follow transactions. And they say, okay, he's doing a transaction with Josh coming up here soon. So they wait till the last minute, right before closing, and they send an email to Josh saying, we've changed transfer information. You need to now wire your funds here.
So that's one of the things that I think it's, especially Alyssa and I being directly involved in real estate primarily. Josh handles any commercial loans. So he does equipment loans, he does build out loans, he does, if it's a potential loan in the commercial world, he does anything. But with Alyssa and I, we strictly deal with real estate. And so I tell every single one of my clients, I don't care what email you receive, pick up the phone, verify it verbally with the people that you have already been talking to.
Yeah.
It's a $1 trillion industry. Wire fraud is $1 trillion industry. So
I've had a client that wired money to the wrong place.
Yeah.
So that was not a phone call I wanted to receive, because she actually, I think she texted me. It was a cash transaction. It was $300,000. And I mean, she forwarded me the email after she texted me, and my stomach just like completely dropped. And I'm pretty sure I went pale on the face. And she forwarded me the email, and I can tell because I am looking for these things, and I've told my clients what to look for, but they are so legitimate looking. And the email address is just formatted to where, especially when it's coming from something title, it's, a capital I is actually an L, or lowercase l is a capital I, and things that can be easily transferred. I mean, she somehow, I have no idea how Schwab was able to get her money back, but they did. Maybe it was actually through some sort of insurance. I don't know, but yeah. So
a lot of it is how quickly they catch it and how quickly they report it. But you're right. I mean, the example that when I was using Josh as an example, where it really became an issue was because the fraudster was able to get in to the realtor's account.
Yeah.
All the subsequent correspondence weren't fake emails. Those were actual emails from that realtor's account. So it's not that. But you're right, Alyssa. Before, it was fairly easy if you took the time to recognize these fraudulent emails because of spelling or grammar, or it didn't sound like somebody would write it, or it was obvious that the email address was different. But you're right, now
how many princes can be in Africa, right? How many African princes are there?
There's a fair amount,
but it is that idea of, as JP said, it's taking that breath and saying, all right, I've received this. There's let me confirm it, because one of the things that we counsel our brokers and our independent title and attorney agents on, really the folks that we're writing the majority of the business insurance for, is there's a couple of things. One, be very serious about how you disclose information. Be very serious about how you document decisions. It's almost, for those of us that have been in the corporate world and you've done meeting reports or conference reports where this is when we met, this is who was there, this is where we met, this was the agenda, this was discussed. this was decided and here are the next steps. That, you know, you almost need to have those all the time with your clients in whatever business that you're in, but also do that as a service for your clients, but also as a protection for yourself. And then make sure that we're sending those to our clients so there's no confusion. We're keeping, that documentation. And I think the other one that's critical for all of our clients is if there's going to be changes in how we handle transactions, that we know up front that this is how we communicate changes. For example, there shouldn't be, I can't think of a situation, at least from a residential realtor perspective, where they're going to be handling funds, unless they also do some property management work. So there ought to be an understanding that if there's a change in how we're going to send funds, that one, it's going to come from the title agency, and then two, it's not going to be over email, that somebody's going to pick up the phone and call, so that we understand that this is how we do business. Everybody's clear about how we do business. And then the other thing that's critical, because if you do have to go to court, unfortunately, the court's going to make the real estate professionals prove that they were diligent in what they said and they did what they said. So not only are they going to want to see for that specific instance, did you follow the processes, but they're also going to see that you do it on a consistent basis with all your clients.
Well, man, so outside of cyber insurance, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, that's why we have so many forms.
Yeah, that's right.
But even beyond the forms, I mean, we
Yes.
even say beyond the forms, at least, I mean, those forms are great, but I mean, it could be things as simple as, so let's say you're helping somebody with purchasing a commercial building, and they need, let's say there's going to need to be some work done on the building. So you recommend an electrician. If there's an issue with that electrician, as an example, more than likely that client is going to lean back on you and say it was your fault.
Yep.
So if you don't have errors and omissions or professional liability coverage, you're going to be at fault. So we talk about the fact that if you're recommending people, and I'm not saying not do it, because part of what our clients look for us to do is to be a resource. So I'm not saying don't be that resource, but if you're going to recommend a partner to do work for a client, make sure it's somebody that you would have do work for you.
So one of the things we always talk about in our offices, we always tell everybody, don't be the source, be the source of the source.
But even then, even if all you do is say, here's a list of, if there's a problem, because regardless of whether it's your fault or not, they can still sue. So you're still going to have defense costs. So to truly minimize that risk that we talked about up front, one of the things you can do is just make sure that regardless if you're just giving somebody a list or you're suggesting, hey, a list is the person to deal with on this issue, make sure it's somebody that you would be comfortable doing business with yourself. And I think that's the best way that you can minimize that risk.
Josh, you got any questions, man?
So, I mean, obviously cybersecurity is going to be one of the bigger things moving forward, but trajectorying out, if that's even a word, but looking outwards, 5-10 years from now, since everything is based on risk and time, what else do you see coming into to be a big player with insurance and businesses in the next 5 to 10 years? What is something we need to be looking towards in the future?
Well, I do agree that cyber is going to continue to be an issue and something that that businesses need to consider very seriously. I do think professional liability is always going to be important for clients to consider. In a sense, all professional liability is, or sometimes you hear it called errors and omissions. It's like malpractice. Doctors get malpractice insurance, so in case they make a mistake, they've got some coverage if they're sued. So errors and omissions or professional liability coverage is just that. It's malpractice insurance for businesses, and one of the reasons that I think it's so important is that many times when you see that people have fallen, and basically what it does is if somebody feels like you did not do your professional duty in that transaction, that you did not deliver for whatever reason what you promised, that they'll sue because it costs them either the value of the home, or it costs them the transaction, or the transaction wasn't what it said it was going to be. But they're going to sue you because they feel or they believe. And there are a number of reasons why we see errors and omissions suits, but it boils down to somebody feels or believes that you did them something wrong. And it could be an issue where it's a fiduciary situation. So because of how you handled this deal, you cost me money. Or it could be that I was expecting a certain level of service in this transaction and you didn't deliver that. Or in many cases, we're starting to see concerns about that you didn't provide me the service that you normally provide your other clients because of my age or my race or my religious preference or my sexual preference or my gender identification, whatever, I was a veteran, whatever it may be, that people feel like that because of that, you didn't provide me those services. So again, even if it's the suit has no legs, there's still going to be defense costs. So I think having errors and omissions coverage is going to be critical. If you have a business where people are coming to your office or coming to your showroom, general liability is nice to have because it protects if somebody were to get hurt. So if I was visiting an office and I tripped and fell and broke my arm, it would help with those coverages. If you are for realtors and real estate brokers, if they're handling open houses, or if you're taking people out to see properties that they're considering purchasing, it's good to have the general liability because, again, if they were to get hurt on that property that you were showing, you've got some protection there. You also have some protection if you were to damage that property. In the case of a real estate broker, if they were staging a home and they broke something of value, that would help. But it could be the same thing if you were getting ready to show a piece of commercial property and you did something to damage that property, then you would have some coverage there. So I think that's one that's always important to keep in mind.
And this does happen quite a bit because my mom actually fell at her insurance company in front of her insurance company on an ice pathway. And so that stuff does happen quite a bit.
Well, it does. So just, it's a way to minimize that risk and offset it onto an insurance company with a general liability plan. Depending upon the size of your company, there are some times that you can get what's known as a business owner's policy or business owner's plan. And that takes the general liability coverage and it combines it with commercial property. So the protection of your business stuff. So if your server is damaged, your desks are damaged, your monitors are damaged, your furniture for your business is damaged, it can help with that coverage. So depending upon the size of your company, many times you can combine those two, and that's worth considering. Because we are in such a litigious world, if an organization has a significant number of employees, workers' compensation is always one to keep in mind because it helps if an employee suffers an injury at work, and it can also help if an employee is injured and they file a suit against the organization, and it can help with some of those legal costs. So because the general liability coverage is going to help with somebody that's a guest or a client or prospective client. The workers' compensation is going to help if it's one of your employees. The other one that we're starting to see a bit more coverage from is employment practices liability. And that's in the situation that if you end up getting sued by an employee. So you wrongful fire, you fired me for the wrong reason. There was a situation with I didn't get paid right, or if I did, if I got underpaid, or somebody else got a promotion that I didn't feel like I deserved, or somebody, there's pay inequity. That there's some things along those lines, allegations brought against you by an employee. The employment practices liability is one that does come into play.
It seems like there's a lot. Go ahead. Like all three of us, let's go at once. Hey, I talk way too much, so you guys have at it. What do y'all got?
Go ahead, Alyssa.
All right, I was going to say ladies first. That's why I'm here. So, John, you're mentioning general liability and like business owners' policies. There are so many people nowadays that have businesses that they run out of their homes. How does that pertain or relate or overlap, or does it completely not overlap with your homeowner's policy? Do you add your house on the BOP? Do you add your vehicle? Well, probably not your vehicle. But I'm just thinking of people that I know that run businesses out of their homes. I was dealing with a roofer yesterday. He doesn't actually have a brick and mortar shop. He just runs it out of his house. So how do people like that insure what they need to without having lapses or lacks of coverage?
In general terms, and this is broad terms because everybody's different and every plan is different. But in broad terms, more often than not, the home insurance is probably not going to cover that business.
The liability from that
the liability. So they would want that to consider. Now, though, if they're working out of their home and they don't have any situations where they're taking customers anywhere, now the roofer would benefit from general liability because of the chance of somebody getting hurt. If they've got a member of their team falls off a roof and breaks their arm. I mean, we had a member of our staff was having a roof put on their home, and first 5 minutes of the job, guy falls off and breaks his arm. Fortunately, the member of our staff that was having the roof put on their home knew enough to ask to make sure that the roofer was properly insured and had the coverage before they hired them. But where the general liability could come into play, maybe they don't need general liability, but they might want to consider commercial property because of that damage. But so there might be some commercial property coverage that they would want to consider. But the first thing would be to see if there's any caveat within their home plan that might allow for some of that. And if there's not, then they could look to a potentially commercial property plan as an option.
Okay.
I think the other one, though, that's kind of similar to that is I'm sure we're all seeing more and more folks that are getting into these short-term rentals. And whether it be an investment property. So let's say you've got a client that's bought a home that they're going to use it as investment property. Well, that home insurance plan is not going to cover that. You're going to need dwelling fire, or sometimes it's called a property plan for cover that. But people might assume that because it's a home, that home insurance would cover it. The same goes for the short-term rentals, that you can use your actual home for a short-term rental, but your home insurance is not going to cover that for that portion of the home use. So you would still need to get that short-term rental coverage, and that's considered a business policy because it's a business that you're transacting. So there are some things that they would expect you to do above and beyond because it's your home. But if you think about when we've had big events in Houston, I'm sure anybody that lives in and around Energy Stadium, probably within 10 or 15 miles, have thought, with the Super Bowls and the NCAA tournaments and all that, even the rodeo, I can rent out my house and make significant amount of money. I'm sure for the golf fans, folks that live in Augusta, Georgia, probably leave that 2 weeks around the Masters because they can cover their mortgage for the year just on that rental. But again, it's having that type of coverage. So again, one of the things that we emphasize when we're working with our real estate business clients is how that property is going to be used is going to drive the types of coverage that's needed.
you're actually bringing it's a great segue into what you and I talked about before everybody got on. So while we were in the process of getting ready to record, John and I had a chance to talk about some things. And one of the things that we got a chance to talk about was the fact that people seem to becoming more and more casual when it comes to their actual insurance. People are getting away from it. If I've got a house and I pay for home insurance, but I decide I want to rent it out half the year, why in the heck would I ever get insurance for my short-term rental? I mean, I'm already covered, so why wouldn't I? I've done the bare minimum. And so I think it's a good time for us to really honestly look at this and potentially segue into the final portion of our discussion, which is what are the you've already talked about the benefits of not being casual, about being covered, but what have you seen where people have come to you and it's already too late? The damage has been done.
Well, I think the thing goes back to that definition of being properly insured, understanding the coverage that you have versus the coverage that you don't, and being, if not comfortable, at least understanding what decision you've made based upon your situation at that time, and assuming that because I have insurance that I'm automatically covered. An example of this is we have a client that's a real estate broker, and the broker is also an investor. So the broker's business is well covered. The broker on their investment properties decided not to have flood coverage. And then after
big mistake.
After Harvey,
Indeed,
the broker called and said, "I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway." And the question was, do I have coverage? And no, you do not. And then the broker said, and we talked about it, and you recommend it, and yes, we did. So the point being is I think folks, whether it be their personal insurance or their business insurance, need to think of it in terms as part of their overall monetary strategy or investment strategy, so that if you do an analysis of your money on a quarterly basis or a semi-annual basis or an annual basis, take some time to make sure, especially from a business perspective, do I have the right amount of coverage? Because there's some things that can affect that. So, has your business grown significantly? Has the gross commissionable revenues, for real estate businesses, has that grown considerably, or has it decreased? Are the services that you're offering greater or less? Because the more services that you offer in the eyes of an insurance company, the greater risk you have. And if you change those services or you add services and you don't notify, then that could have an effect. The number of employees you have could have an effect, because they're looking at it. The insurance companies are looking at it from how much risk are we taking on, and the more risk that we're taking on, the more things that they may expect you to do prior to coverage, and then potentially the more expensive the coverage is because of that. So keeping that in mind, knowing what's important to you as a business owner from a coverage perspective. Could be some folks that I'm not as much worried about commercial property, but I am worried about making sure that if we damage somebody's property in the act of doing business, that we've got coverage there. So it's understanding what's important to you. And then I think the other one that's very simple, but again, it's as busy as we all are, is taking the time to spend with an insurance advisor to make sure that, based upon what my current needs are, does my coverage match that? And then I would add to that is work with somebody, an insurance company that has an area of expertise in your industry. So not just a generalist, but somebody that has an area of expertise in your industry. So we've talked about cyber coverage and general liability and errors and omissions as an example today, the insurance partners that we work with all have plans that for those types of insurance that are specific for the real estate industry. So they do have a sense of understanding of that industry. So that's important. And then making sure that the advisor that you're working with has a sense of understanding for that industry as well.
So I think go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm glad you asked that question, JP, because it went along the same lines of what I was thinking, but I had a second follow-up question in that, you and me share a common buddy, Mark, who's also in insurance, and he talks quite a bit about how, with the market, inflation, all these other things, medium-sized businesses to larger-sized businesses are actually foregoing insurance with how much insurance costs go up. And I think you touched on a little bit about why companies would want to have that insurance regardless. But two, a trend I keep seeing with a lot of these companies, and hopefully you can speak to it on your specific company, but it's not the combat to that was also not being reactive, but proactive. So can you speak to some of the things that that you guys specifically do that are more proactive for some of your clients, especially in the higher risk categories?
Well, I think we're seeing a trend we're definitely seeing on the business insurance side. And I personally think we'll see it at some point on the personal insurance side. But there are some expectations from the business insurance companies, the folks writing errors and omissions and cyber liability and general liability. There are some expectations that they have for companies that they'll write for before they'll even provide a plan option. So, do you have a certain level of firewall in place? What types of security software do you have in place? Do you automatically update those when patches are available? Do you work with a third-party technology resource that helps protect your data information? Are you using multifaceted authentication for your key files, your key data points for your email? Do you have processes in place that the company uses on a regular basis and are updated on a regular basis? Do you provide training, for your clients? What types of software do you use? There's all different things that they're going to want to see and expect to have in place before they'll even consider, in many cases, writing coverage. So I think that's what you're seeing. I think those companies that have decided to forego coverage, Josh, they're basically just saying, I'm going to self-insure, that I feel like that I'm going to do enough to minimize that risk, and I'll just take the chance if something bad happens. But there's some other things that you can always look to doing as far as how you handle the coverage. I mean, you can increase your deductible. That can help with the premium. You can set it up where maybe it's coverage just for key catastrophes. Maybe you don't have quite a high liability limit. So there are some things you can do to manage the investment of the coverage. But again, it still boils down to how much risk you're comfortable with taking on yourself versus how much you would willing to offset or move to the insurance company by having certain insurance coverage.
Yep. One of my favorite things on the internet that I saw when I was a kid was a more or less, not a scam, but it was an open scam, I guess. Like, it was very obvious. It was a place called the Church of the Subgenius, and it was $99 for eternal salvation or triple your money back. And so if you really want to put your faith in being self-insured, I think you might as well go ahead and join the Church of Subgenius as well, because your eternal salvation guaranteed is not going to be bought for $99. John, we thank you so much, man. Like, we couldn't have asked for a better first time guest. Now we've got your information going across the bottom, but why don't you just go ahead and give everybody a real quick rundown? How do we get a hold of you?
Sure. There are several ways. You can reach us on our toll-free number. That's 866-798-2827. You can reach me on my direct line, 625-8160, and I'll be sure and get you to the member of our team that can best help you. You can learn more about our firm at stewartinsurance.com, or you can email me at john.bramblett. That's BRAMBLETT at stewart.com. We're part of the Stewart Title family, so as you can imagine, we've got a great of an emphasis on the real estate commercial world, as well as helping people with their personal insurance. So we would be, happy to have a chance to visit with you and see if we can help you make sure that you or your company is properly insured.
And the best way to do that is always, for the person who needs the insurance, be proactive. Don't wait till you've got 6 feet of water in your house. Don't wait till your kids run your brand new car off into some pole or something like that. Pick up the phone, be proactive, and be protective. Call John with Stewart Insurance. John, thank you so much, man. I don't think we can thank you enough.
I appreciate it. I'm honored to be the first guest on the podcast, and I look forward to being the guest on the first anniversary show.
Hey, yeah. I hold you to it.
You got it.
All right, brother. You have a blessed day.
Thanks,
man.
John.
Thank y'all.
Later. Guys, that was great.
Yeah.
So
not too many.
You can tell like how knowledgeable he is. Oh my gosh. I feel like he could talk about it.
I think the hard part with him is he was so knowledgeable. Like, to cut him off, I felt like I'd be cutting him out of something. But at the same time, like it's almost dry. So we're gonna have to figure out some ways to cut up those guests that are, so informational that we can keep it kind of entertaining to.
Well, the thing is honestly, like, so when it comes to somebody like John that has that much knowledge, really, we can actually turn around and turn those into clips. And so we can turn around our YouTube page and actually give, 1 to 3 minute blips to help draw people to him and draw people to us both. And so, I mean, like, I really think that it's imperative that we give them the time and the space, because I think that sometimes it's going to help us to actually feed our people. I wouldn't have that information. I'd be like, hey, call John, and that's where I'm at. They're like, hey, you're a business owner? I sure am. I am an independent operator, right? I'm like, well, hey, do you have commercial auto insurance? Yeah, no, I don't.
It's so hard to know what. I mean, there's so many types of insurance you need nowadays. Like, those guys really need to know it all. I feel like that's the biggest thing changing. I think in discussion with Mark saying what he did on the how he's losing some clients and stuff. I think you got to be that much more up in your client's business and being able to see what what they need to know, getting them the information. I mean, half the time when I close a deal, it's because we had more information than the other lender or another broker that had seen the deal prior. That's what
I was going to say. You, like, even in the business that we run, we have to be very much up in our client's business and asking the question.
It's a common subject we have at KW all the time. And so one of the things that when we talk about the general public, and one of the best parts about our podcast is to really shed light on the fact that the general public thinks of almost all sales people in the same way they think of a used car salesman. Somebody shows up on a used car lot. Yeah. And we're not talking about like a used car lot at the Mercedes dealership or even at the Chevy dealership. We're talking about somebody shows up at the used car lot that offers weekly payments, right? That's the car salesman they expect us. We are, is they like, oh, smell blood in the water. They need something. Let's drag every penny out of them. When in all reality, I've had clients come to me with $1 million budgets, and I'll show them $500,000 place. If it fits better, I don't care what the budget is. What I care is that the client gets taken care of. And if I can reduce their cost and give them what they need, then they have the money to do the things they need to do. And so I think it's imperative that John and I talked about it before you guys popped in. It's imperative for everybody to take a salesperson role. in every aspect of our clients' businesses.
People freak out because of AI and all this technology that's coming out, and I don't. And I think it just goes to the same topic as what we're talking about is you can only do so much automatically. There's a lot of paper pushers in real estate that literally just, hand the documents, get the documents signed, move. There's a lot of people in brokering who take the deals and they throw them at the wall, the different lenders. But truly and the reason I'm thinking even on Mark and some of these other people in insurance, the reason that they're losing some of their deals and clients is because they're not able to give that personal touch of actually talking to them and doing it on a semi-regular basis. I mean, I've got a calendar literally dedicated for follow-ups to current clients and past clients, just so that I can say, hey, because nowadays too, the other part of it is everybody wants the deal now. So, I'm always talking about how if I get a phone call, I'm answering it then, and I'm calling them back if I didn't get to it right then, because they're just moving on to the next person. A lot of these transactions, talk to them. When can I get a real person on the phone?
Retention is such a big deal. Retention is huge. If I hadn't retained my top 5 clients, then I wouldn't have a business. And I've still got
every year.
Yeah. And I can't afford to start over every year. And not only can I not afford to start over every year, but I wouldn't want to. I mean, finding my clients has been a godsend. A couple of them fell in my lap. A couple of them found me because of some listings. A couple of them have been handed to me by agents or other agents or by lenders, So, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, hey, it's time for us to get things rolling. But at the same time, while I need to grow, I can't grow if I can't take care of what I've already got. You can't increase the size of your garden if everything that you already are growing is dying.
Yep.
I
Good point. Great analogy.
I'm terrible at gardening, so
unfortunately, I'm really good at it and I hate it.
Fun fact, I cannot keep anything in the ground alive, and I was the president of our neighborhood garden club for 5 years.
Wow.
That's awesome.
They just needed a body to make things happen.
Yeah.
It's like, as long as it's not prerequisite, I'm not going to be tested on plant identities. I can do that.
I thought I was about to have a visitor come around and he decided
he was I like
thing.
This too. I like this, just speaking out loud. I like this component of reviewing guests afterwards and talking about it. I think this should be a regular element of the show as well.
I agree. Yeah, I think it well, so I mean the biggest thing is it helps us prove to the people that hopefully are watching our podcast still at this point.
Millions.
The millions of them, the millions of milliseconds that they've been watching. It shows to them that we're involved in every aspect of business. When we came up with our name Bizfluent, the whole purpose of that is because, I'm a real estate agent. I'm a commercial real estate agent. I deal with all kinds of businesses, from gyms to restaurants. Right now I'm working with a tattoo shop. I've worked with some really tough businesses to get into places. And in order to help get an extra edge on somebody else that might not want us in, I pry and I get as much information out of my clients as I can so that I can turn around and get them into the place they want to be. And so being fluent in business is just, if you're not fluent in business, then you're in the wrong business already. Alyssa deals with nothing but clients that are mass or multiple property owners from all over the place. And then you turn around and you've got all the lending that you do across the country.
Yeah. No, I think it keeps it exciting too to get into. In fact, today I got a new niche, major artist in Vegas and over in for Burning Man. So I'm actually excited about this client because I'm hoping I got an in for tickets.
I mean, but after last year, are you wanting to go?
Oh, I'd still go. I think even if it was raining, it'd be an interesting experience. All those people crying.
Would be
but I can rough it. So
you can handle it. Yeah, some of those people.
I'm too bougie.
What's the difference? It was either sandstorms or rain and flood. I mean, which one's better? I don't know. Apparently the sandstorms were.
When I go to the beach, I get in sand in places I didn't know existed. So I sure as heck ain't going to a freaking desert or a dry lake bed.
Oh man, I was hoping you were coming with me, JP.
Nope, I am not that guy, bro. Not that guy.
We were gonna wear matching bikinis.
I mean, so sad to miss that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you haven't really missed my bikini shot. My bikini shot is that Southern Comfort commercial. That's mine. Only instead of it being a glass of Southern Comfort, it's definitely a glass of Balvenie. So I don't think Balvenie is looking for me though. They're not auditioning.
Future sponsor.
Amen. So, well, guys, I think great first show. Right here at 1 hour. We're at the 57-minute mark. How does on top of that, we had to rush Alyssa in on a life flight, more or less, and so she made it. And
I'm glad we did it today. It was either her thin or me thin tomorrow. So,
and yeah, we got Mike issues over here.
I'm texting my wife. Don't walk back here. Keep the dog.
Yeah.
I'm like all the things I forgot.
No, I used to take in our old house. On the other podcast that I did, I'd close the door, and as soon as she'd try to open the door, I'm like, I'm like, what are you doing?
And let's welcome our next guest.
And now instead, she's below me in the loft, so I'm up in the loft, and she's right here. So, well, guys, hey, it was a great show. Any questions? Any way to end this? I mean, let's go ahead and tell everybody. I'm JP Byers, Crush City Realty Group. I am the commercial real estate agent for Crush City Realty Group. Go Astros! As well, you can contact me at 713-423-5898. I would tell you my email address, but it's been on the ticker, and it's a mouthful. Alyssa,
it is a mouthful. I remember trying to put it in my phone. I was like, is it just realty or realty group? Nope. Whole thing.
Thing.
I'm Alyssa Emmons. I'm luxury real estate specialist. I can speak. And my contact info is up there, 713-899-0399.
And it's Josh Perella, Covo Capital, all your commercial lending needs, equipment, SBA, owner-occupied real estate, merchant services, factoring, tons of tools. We got a lot more tools than most. And at the very least, we can speak to you on the basis of working for you instead of the bankers who work for the banks. We can give you a good side to work with, navigating that new realm, how banks are changing.
Cool. Well, guys, you have been here with us on the Bizfluent podcast. Y'all have a blessed day, a wonderful week. We'll see y'all next Thursday.
Bye.
Alrighty.
So the only thing I